I'm going to show you everything that Iron Mike Malloy drank while a bunch of people were trying to kill him with drink. Hello, I'm Sinead from the Poisonous Cabinet podcast. If you're new here, we tell historic true crime cases with a dash of humour to them while mixing up curious cocktails inspired by the tales that we tell. If you like what you see, if you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe. We first told the story of Iron Mike Malloy on episode 20 of our podcast, but given that we have so many more subscribers now, we think it's time that we put to the test everything that Iron Mike Malloy was alleged to have drunk on that fateful night in 1930s New York when some men got together and thought, you know what would be clever? Let's get a known vagrant and drunk, really drunk, then try to kill him and claim some insurance on him. First, a bit of background. Iron Mike Malloy was an Irish immigrant living in New York in 1932. Now, not much is known about his childhood. Really not much is known about anything of his life, other than the fact that he worked a few jobs, mainly asking for alcohol instead of money for payment. It's thought that he was a firefighter at one stage. By the time this story starts, he's around 60 years old, but is still a fine figure of a man. I mean, not in terms of looks. He's pretty tough. Now, Mike was a regular at a speakeasy owned by one Tony Marino. Now, Tony Marino was talking to two of his friends, Francis Pasqua and Daniel Kreisberg. Business was tough for Tony. However, he had actually cottoned on to a rather cunning, if he said so himself, insurance fraud scam. All they needed to do was get a vagrant, a known drunk from the streets, get them absolutely slaughtered, and then make sure they fell asleep outside so they would die of pneumonia, natural causes. But beforehand, they would have taken out a life insurance policy on them and they would all be able to cash in. They had done this once before with a young woman named Mabel, and it had been a success. Looking around the bar, they spied Mike Malloy and thought they'd found their next target. So here was the play. All they needed to do was get Mike completely and utterly plastered, and then they would leave him out in the cold or push him into some oncoming traffic, or maybe he'd just die of alcohol poisoning. That would be lucky. No one would wonder what had happened to him. No one would ask questions. The trio worked on this scam for several weeks, and they went to various life insurance companies to take out 3 policies in total on Mike's life, one of them posing as Mike's brother. Apparently, Mike didn't need to be there for the insurance companies to go, yeah, okay, fine, as long as you're paying premiums, we'll sign anything. They took out policies that equated to $3,500 at the time for Mike's life. And in December 1932, it was time to put the plan into action. So here we are at Tony Marino's speakeasy. It's my living room. For the purposes of this demonstration, this silver pot is going to represent Mike Malloy's stomach. So into the bar walks Mike Malloy one evening. He goes up to order his usual shot of whiskey, and Tony says, "Don't you worry, Mike. Everything is on us. You now have an open tab at this bar." Mike doesn't really question it. Absolutely. Free drinks, why not? And so the men start pouring him whiskey. And Mike would drink and drink and drink and drink. Mike consumed as much whiskey as the men could give him. In fact, at one point, Tony's arm got tired from pouring whiskey into his glass. By the end of the night, Mike was suitably sozzled. He got up, waved goodbye, and walked out the door. If the bar owners thought that they could take Mike Malloy down on the first night, they were sorely mistaken. Mike returned night after night after night, 3 nights in a row, drinking every single drop of whiskey that they could hand him. Whiskey not doing it, they started throwing in some gin. Still, Mike showed no signs of slowing down. On the 4th night, the group were wondering, is Mike going to turn up? He was later than usual. Perhaps he'd fallen, hit his head, and actually, maybe he'd succumbed to all the alcohol. No, the door's open and Mike walks in and says, "Boy, ain't I got a thirst." Okay, Tony and the gang think, this man is not going to go down easy. So they decide they're going to up things a notch with wood alcohol, also known as methanol. The gang reasoned, wood alcohol will slow him down. I know I'm trying to be authentic in this video, but I am not going to put methanol into this bowl. It's highly flammable. They poured Mike his first shot of wood alcohol. Knocked it back and asked for more. Okay, so wood alcohol won't work. How about a little antifreeze? Nothing was taking Mike down, and the alcohol kept flowing. You might be wondering whether or not Mike was actually getting hungry at this point. Don't worry, they provided snacks. The gang were only too happy to supply Mike with a delicious rotten sardine sandwich. And to make it extra tasty, they also put in some carpet tacks and bits of metal shrapnel. Mike chewed it down and asked for seconds. Mike also had room for a selection of delicious oysters that had been soaked in wood alcohol. And more whiskey. At one point, Mike Malloy did slump to the floor, apparently in a complete stupor. Had he finally succumbed to all of the poison and metal and booze they'd put into his system? It just took a couple of seconds before he started snoring loudly. A few hours later, he woke up on the spot in the bar and jumped up and said, "Give me some of the old regular, my lad." By now, the gang were running out of time, they were running out of alcohol, and they were running out of patience. More of their regulars in the bar were demanding free drinks. Why was Mike getting something if they couldn't? And also, they were still paying out the premiums on his life insurance policy. The man had been drinking for days and days and days with no sign of stopping. They took Mike outside when he was in one of his drunken stupors. They laid him out in the freezing cold of New York, in the snow, taking off his clothes, throwing water over him, and then leaving them in the hope that he might freeze to death. The next day, Tony walked into his bar to find Mike Malloy waiting for him, saying he had nothing more than a wee chill. Anyone who has an Irish mammy will know that you could have full-blown flu and you were supposed to get up and say, "Ah, it's nothing, it's a wee chill, nothing a cup of tea wouldn't fix." The gang then decided they would put Mike in a road traffic accident. They took him out into the streets and they ran their car at him. He dodged it twice despite being absolutely plastered. But the third time they tried it, they hit him and reversed over him. Leaving him seemingly for dead in the road, they went back to the bar and prayed. 5 days passed. They were certain that Mike was going to turn up in the morgue soon. In walks Mike through the door with a wee limp, asking for another shot of whiskey. Eventually, the gang grew so impatient that they took a very drastic measure, and this would be the downfall of their scheme. Mike was not going to go out easy, so again, when he was at a drunken stupor, they dragged him out of the bar, but this time they took him to a nearby apartment. They placed him on a bed, they tied a rubber tube around his face and into his mouth, and then connected it with the gas lamps. And Mike was slowly gassed with coal gas, and eventually died. The gang, flush with success, went straight to the insurance company to cash in on their policy. However, the insurance company had questions which they couldn't really answer, i.e., where is the body? We kind of need to see the body to make sure that what you're telling us is true. Also, rumours had been spreading around New York and had reached the ears of the police that Mike Malloy had finally been put down by a gang who had life insurance claims to his name. Eventually, the original 3 of the so-called murder trust were arrested along with some accomplices that they had had to enlist along the way to try and get Mike Malloy to stay down. They were charged with his murder and fraud. 4 of the 5 who were convicted were sent to the electric chair. Now, how did Mike Malloy survive this ordeal that they put him through? I can't answer for the carpet tacks or the rotten oysters and sardines, but the fact that he had consumed both ethanol and methanol means that his body was sort of fighting itself. All of the deep, dark poisons that they were pouring into him, ethanol, methanol, antifreeze, were working against each other and keeping Mike alive. That's one theory, or I prefer the logic that you should never, ever try to take an Irishman down with drink. Now, this concoction, as delicious and aromatic as it is, this has been a delight. As fun it is for this video, it's not worthy of Mike Malloy. There have been so many great cocktails made in his name and in his memory, but some classics that we think Mike Malloy would have enjoyed and are worthy of such a great man. So we're going to mix one up. Dating back to 1900, the simply named the Irish cocktail. Here's to you, Iron Mike. Oh, that'll get you there. Remember, if you want to hear more historic, weird true crime stories and enjoy some cocktails while you listen, please like and subscribe to The Poisoner's Cabinet and listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, your loved ones are trying to kill you.